Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. For Lena McGuire, scope creep really can show up around every corner. She's in the home remodeling business. But for most owners, including Jaci Russo and Ted Wolf, projects that expand out of control can be less visible, but just as hard to contain. It's baked into the job because every assignment comes with a built-in tradeoff: protect your margins or protect the relationship. And especially in the early days of a business, when reputation feels like everything, that's not much of a choice. I was afraid to have tough conversations with people, Ted says. I just wanted everybody to like us. Over time, systems help and boundaries get clearer. But the pressure never fully disappears. There's always one more request, one more detail to tweak, especially when you're thinking about the reviews and testimonials. You want to get those nice photos at the end, says remodeler Lena. You want to get a referral. This week, Lena, Jaci, and Ted talk about how their thinking on scope creep has evolved and why it never stops being an issue. Plus, on the small business subreddit, an owner recently posted that he finds chasing accounts receivable so distasteful it feels like begging that he often puts it off and hopes for the best. Is this just me, he wants to know? Or is this a common thing for small business owners? We discuss. And Jaci explains why, even if she could get it, she wouldn't even consider accepting a $500 million account promoting a big deal consumer brand. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. In fact, that's the whole idea behind the 21 Hats community, engaging with other owners to get the kinds of insight only another owner can offer. If you're interested in learning more, you can sign up for the Morning Report newsletter, which offers examples every day of owners confronting challenges and seizing opportunities. Just search the 21 Hats Morning Report to subscribe. Joining me this week on the podcast are Lena McGuire, CEO of Spoka Kitchen and Bath, which is based near Syracuse, New York, and designs and manages home remodeling projects. Jaci Russo, CEO of Brand Russo, a branding agency based in Lafayette, Louisiana. And Ted Wolf, who is CEO of GuideWise, which helps businesses implement AI and is based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The episode is titled, There's Scope Creep Around Every Corner. Before we get started, this episode is brought to you by Grasshopper Bank, a full-service digital bank that, unlike a lot of banks, really wants to work with small businesses. As you may have heard, I've been speaking with Chris Tremont, who is Grasshopper's Chief Digital Officer, about the bank's offerings. In this segment, Chris and I discuss how Grasshopper helps business owners manage their cash reserves. When we talk about financial health, everyone talks about how businesses should have a rainy day fund. But for a small business, it can be hard to develop that fund, but also safety is a big concern. Where do you think businesses should be keeping their cash reserves, and how does your platform help them balance that need for liquidity with the desire for higher yields?
You're going to determine how much cash you need to keep in your day-to-day operating account. The hope would be, from our perspective, is those funds should earn a little bit of yield or interest. A lot of banks don't offer any interest on those operating funds. We do, and we're fairly competitive, and we attach it with a business debit card that you can use physically or virtually, and you can earn cash back. And that could be sufficient for some businesses that say, I just need the operating account. But for those that want to maybe optimize yield or have done a fundraise or just have more cash sitting around than they need on the day-to-day basis, the next stage might be to look at, does your bank offer some sort of competitive business savings or money market account that provides FDIC insurance? We at Grasshopper do that and offer a competitive yield on those deposits that are FDIC insured. And then a third layer to this, or a third leg, would be what we would call sort of the treasury solution. So those that maybe might want to say, I want to earn an even higher yield than what a bank depository product might offer. And so now you're getting a little bit more into asset management, where you might be looking at things like treasuries or T-bills or other financial instruments that can offer a yield that's even higher than what banks can pay on deposits. And that is actually an offering that Grasshopper has as well. And I would challenge some of your listeners here on the business side to look at your bank statements and look at if you've got a business checking or savings or money market account today with a bank, look at what that APY is. What is that product yielding? And if it's yielding something under 2.5% or 3%, you're probably leaving money on the table.
And now, on to the episode. Welcome, Lena, Jaci, and Ted. It's great to have all of you here. I want to start with an issue that's come up here from time to time, but we've never really addressed it head on, and that's dealing with the dreaded phrase of scope creep. I guess first question, at some point, has this been an issue for all three of you?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely for me.
All right. Anybody, can you tell me the last time a project went beyond what you scoped and, what actually happened? Who wants to go first?
12 minutes ago.
Yeah, every project.
Jaci, you go first.
Okay. And I don't mean to be jumping in quicker with the answer. It's just like literally as I was logging in, someone was in my office sharing with me that, we were working on this thing. And I said, was that in the original scope? And they said, no. So it literally just happened.
I like being timely, Jaci.
You are always timely, Lauren. For us, I will take responsibility and I will share the credit / blame. I think that as a service-oriented company, in professional services and really focusing on service, we pride ourselves on being high touch, high value, which also means kind of high cost. There's going to be that yes factor. Yes, we can help with that. Yes, we can do that. Yes, we want to make sure we have all of these pieces so that we can paint the full picture and achieve the goals. And I think that naturally lends itself to scope creep.
I want to hear what happened in this specific instance and how you will deal with it now that it's happened.
Sure. Most of our clients are staffed in their own departments, which is part of the reason why we have jobs. So I appreciate that. But then there's things that they can't do. They don't have the skill sets, the software, the talent, the time for. And they turn to us. And it reminds me sometimes of when somebody asks someone in charge of IT to build a website, because in their mind, those things are both computer things. And so they go together, when in fact, those two things are not at all the same.
Right.
So sometimes scope creep comes from just not knowing where the parameters are. So that's a little bit of we should communicate better and they should ask more questions or not assume so much. And then I think sometimes scope creep happens because the original scope was defined so long ago, it evolves over time.
What happened 12 minutes ago?
So 12 minutes ago, we are doing marketing for an event, a B2B conference. And so I was surprised to discover we are also now creating all of the decks for the speakers that were hired to present at the conference.
And how did that happen?
Scope creep.
But more specifically?
So the account manager was asked, hey, I'm sending over the decks for those to get designed. And people pleaser said, okay, great. We'll give them to you, in 3 days or whatever the timeline was. I'm like, but that's not marketing the conference.
Got it. Lena, how about you? You said every project. Tell us about a recent one.
Sure, every project. Well, I'm in remodeling and people don't really understand what they want to do in the beginning. So it's, everybody works the same way in their home. If you're painting the kitchen, all of a sudden the dining room looks dingy. So, we might as well do it. So it's a little bit of, while you're at it, why don't we do this? And then you paint the hallway and now you have to replace the doors or paint those. There's just scope creep around every corner.
Those examples sound pretty clear cut. Like most homeowners would understand that if you're going to paint another room, there's going to be an additional charge.
Yes, but when they want to add new doorknobs, they think, we were replacing the door. Well, yes, you need hardware and hinges too. So sometimes they forget about everything that's included. And it's, take down the old ones, dispose of them, buy the new ones, install the new ones, put the hardware in. So they don't really understand the scope of the scope creep.
And how do you generally deal with it? Do you swallow it or do you try to push back?
I used to, but now we are much better at defining our deliverables. So we talk about things that could happen and we talk about scope creep and how it will be handled. And a lot of times it's just simple phrasing when somebody says, after I've shown them 3 different versions of a space and they want to do something different, we've included this many revisions. So you have to remind them that, this is going to be additional. And in the contract, there's a clause that says, additional work is billed at this rate, or it's a change order. So there are different ways to handle it. But trying to set the expectations at the beginning meeting and then talking to them as we go through the project is helpful. But it always comes up because somebody will have a creative idea. Oh, I think we could squeeze a pantry in the kitchen corner over here. Or what about adding on the mudroom? Or since we're doing this, why don't we go ahead and do that powder room we talked about? So it's scope creep, but it's also an opportunity to do some upselling. So it depends on how you look at it. You can absorb it as scope creep, or you can say that's not in our contract. And now we need to revise that. Let me put a proposal together for you. Let me tell you how much time it's going to take, how much it's going to cost, and when it can be done.
How about you, Ted? Can you give us a recent example?
Well, yeah, and I think that all comes down to the definition of the scope of what you're actually going to do on a project, and that's where the project scope creep comes in. So, they think one thing, we think another. You got to get it in writing. You got to put formalized, here's the process procedures, here's what we do week by week, etc. No difference than what Lena was mentioning about, well, we got to replace a door, so we need new hinges and everything else. Hardware on the door that goes with it, that's why there's an additional cost. Just have to keep working to get a lot of clarity in what it is you offer. And that's where your legal documents come in, the scope of work, master agreements, and things like that. They're all important.
Is there a typical example of that with a client who's working with you on AI where they have an expectation that differs from yours?
Well, they don't know what agents are, and they think one agent can manage an entire sales pipeline, which just cannot be done. There's too much for one agent to do. So an agent, you have to educate them and bring them into the understanding. You try to do it up front, but sometimes it doesn't work. And they think, well, I thought I was going to get this for what you're doing. And fortunately, we've learned enough in project management that we can catch those before it turns into a hardship. But there's all kinds with AI promises that are being made in the market that people don't understand. And that takes a lot of work. And that's scope creep at the project level. You got to be very careful on, because it can literally cost you an awful lot of cash flow.
Jackie, in the situation you described, it was, I believe you said, an account manager who made the decision to people please, as I think you put it. Is that typical? Is the problem generally you or your team?
Oh, not me. I don't deal directly with the clients. And I don't mean not me like it's not me. It's all me, because it all comes back to me. So I can tell you where I should have established some better processes. I need to do a better job of training them to handle those situations, because it's about communication. Lena hit it. When somebody asks for another revision outside the allowed number, or they realize what one dingy room looks like compared to a freshly painted room, how you communicate that is the determination of whether the client feels taken care of or sold to or frustrated by. And so it's all communication.
But no matter how well you communicate at the beginning, I'm guessing there's always the possibility that somebody on the front lines just can't say no.
Well, and how you say no, though, determines how everybody feels about it. And so the communication at the beginning is great, but it's the ongoing communication. Our average client life is 6.5 years. That tells me we do a pretty darn good job of communicating to keep them happy and informed and up to date and not feel like there's an imbalance or advantage or whatever. But we have to be happy too. And so, there was some training that happened right before this call where we discussed how to handle it when someone assumes something is going to happen. How do you properly respond so that they understand, oh, okay, so you're right, that wasn't in the original list. Not that we're not going to do it, but you just need to know that's outside what we were originally hired for, and this is what needs to be the next steps if you want us to do it.
Lena, in your situation, I'm guessing generally if there's a communication problem, there's no one for you to blame. It's it's on you. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, well, it's good, as in I know what's going on. So I don't have to go through a whole chain of command. But it is, the buck stops here. So I have to decide, do I want to take a time loss, a money loss? Do I want to keep the customer happy? You want to get those nice photos at the end. You want to get a referral. So how much do you absorb? How much do you not? When you're first starting out, you're hungry. You take everything that comes along. You're a generalist. But as you grow in your business and you get out of the infancy and into the adolescence of your business, you start realizing that you're going to focus on certain types of projects, certain types of clients, and you're going to start saying no to things. So when scope creep comes up, or when somebody comes in and says that they want to do this, that, and the other thing that wasn't in the contract, you have to start standing up for that. And that can be hard. So a lot of people just keep taking it, and then they get overwhelmed and overworked, and they can't understand why they don't have enough profit. And it's because they're using all their time to do all this free work. If you get a client who's sending you a text of a faucet saying, I like this one, what do you think? And you picked out a faucet a month ago, that's scope creep. They're invading your time and they want your opinion, and they're not thinking that they have to pay for these types of things. It's like you've already finished your obligation on that and you've moved on, and now they're backtracking. So scope creep can hold you back too.
Yeah, and I think scope creep is something you have to manage every day within yourself and with the client. And as Jaci said, it's constant communication. On weekly updates, you've got to clarify, here's where we are. No, it's in writing, but I want to make sure everybody understands this is where we are and there's where we need to go next. And those detailed weekly updates for our business are invaluable in educating ourselves and our clients as to, okay, here's the reality of where this project is. Now, where do we need to go so it wins for everybody? Because it has to win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. We do a weekly call or in person every single week. We touch base on Friday afternoons. And our basic premise is when we're dealing with our clients is we tell them what we're going to tell them. We tell them what we need to tell them. And then we tell them what we told them, because they need to know what the expectations are. This is what we're going to do today. This is your homework. This is my homework. This is when we meet again. And then at the end of the day, this is what we covered. This is what what you've agreed to do. This is what I've agreed to do. This is when we're going to meet. And that you just need constant repetition, constant reassurance. And for us, it works good on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and I think when you build a company, you learn those things. But Lena and Jaci, I'm sure you both, when you started out, you just wanted to generate the revenue. So you said, I don't have time to document meeting minutes and reviews, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what gets you in trouble. What we have today with AI is we can actually transcribe a meeting, put the minutes together, make sense out of them, send them to the client so we're both talking about the same thing, and all the information's on the table then.
Have any of you ever lost a client over a scope creep issue?
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about it?
I said it instantly. I didn't have an immediate client in mind. I'm just sure of it because it happens so regularly. No, I will tell you that especially in the early days as we transitioned, we realized that we had pitched and then evolved into agreements where we were doing a lot of things for a very little amount of money and had to go back to the client and say, we need to make some changes here. We're on a month to month. And so that does go both ways. It's only happened 2 times that I can think of in 25 years. So not a bad track record. But in those 2 times we had to say, listen, you're paying us pennies, but asking for, paper bills of work. And so we need to redefine this. And one time it was fine. We redefined and reallocated and reassessed, and it was great. And one time they said, no, we're not going to pay you more. And if you're not going to continue to do this much, we don't want to work with you. And we said, okay. And they went their way and we went ours. I feel like I have to do the right thing for my team first, the quality of the work, the time that we spend, the frustration. This is not scope creep, but I immediately thought about another interaction with that same client. So I wasn't as sad to see them go because they were kind of abusive. And so when we get the angry, very inappropriately worded emails late in the day or at the end of the day on a Friday, it's like, you're yelling at us right now for something that happened on a Tuesday. So you've just been holding it 3 days to do it at the end of the week, just to kind of make it sit over the weekend, and the way that, and this is just one client, but man, they just wouldn't let it go. And so the parting was positive for a lot of reasons. I don't think most people, when they're scope creep, it's because they're jerks. it's because they don't know better.
I can see that decision that you made being fairly easy for you to make today. But I think you said this was fairly early in the development of your business. How tough was it to see that revenue walk away?
Oh, it's never good. Even today, it's not good. I take it personally, not like I don't like the people anymore, but I will spend quite a bit of time thinking, how could we have done this better? What can we improve for next time? How do I turn this into a lesson? And I'm always looking at the dollars. It doesn't matter if we're having the greatest year we've ever had or a tight year. I'm still pretty tight with the dollars. And so those things are impactful, and it's immediate. Who's out there that's replacing this? Because we do have a nice lineup of the next clients and the next projects. And so I need to make sure that that income is not going to hurt us.
Ultimately, it seems to me the question here comes down to, do you worry more about protecting margin or protecting the relationship with a client? How do you guys think about that?
For me, it's usually the relationship. I always put the client first because my business is based on a lot of referral. I'm only as good as my last project, and I don't need people bad-mouthing me all over town and telling people not to work with me. So it's an incredibly delicate balance to make sure that people are happy, that I'm happy, that the people I'm working with are happy, because it gets tough.
That makes perfect sense, but it does make it harder to deal with scope creep, no?
It does. There are times when I have a line item in my chart of accounts called warranty, and that is for when I have to go ahead and say whatever it takes, and I'm going to pay for it. And then we try to figure out the dollars and cents later. Most of the time, it's equitable, but there are times when, it cost me $3,000 to buy a new cabinet because it needed to be done. It needed to be done right now, and I wasn't able to recoup the cost. But in the end, the kitchen came out great. The customer's happy. I'm short $3,000 of my profit that I thought I was going to have. It's just part of the business.
Ted, how do you think about protecting margin versus protecting the relationship?
I take a different angle, and I think about protecting employees and the contractors and vendors that we use. And I say that because I had a situation, and it wasn't necessarily early in the business, but it happened years ago when we were on a pretty fast pace of growth, scaling, and ran up a considerable accounts receivable with a client. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we were following, and we had it all documented, what we both agreed to, and there wasn't anything there, but they just said, we're not paying because we don't have the money, in effect. And we could have sued them. We could have gone through all that, but we decided the people on the account that was working, who were working on the account, did a really good job. And long story short, we decided to move on. And we learned an awful lot about good and bad clients. But I always look at, okay, our employees and contractors that we're using, what's the impact going to be on them, and how do we all win? Because if we win, the client will win. But there are clients out there, and we've all met them, who I'm going to say are unconscionable in the decisions and the activities they make. And here's another example. One time, very early, we were selling some services and hardware, computer hardware, and an individual found a better deal. How, where, whatever it is, it comes up. Buyer's remorse took over, and we ended up parting ways, but I did it because, again, that's where I started to learn the impact on the employee is the thing I got to watch.
What was your concern? Why would that have an impact on the employee?
Yeah, well, a lot of times when you're working on a very large account or you're working on a large project, you get a number of people involved, and their identity rides on the success of that. And that feeds into the rumor mill in every business. And the rumor mill is the biggest competitor any company has. I don't care if you're 5 people or you're 500 people, 5,000 people. You got to manage that. And to me, I don't want an employee walking around saying, I gave my best work, but we all failed, or I failed, or they start pointing fingers at each other. And then you have team degradation taking place and things like that. So I get everybody in the room. I talk with them. What do we want to do? What's best for the business and everybody here within our organization? Then I go and talk with the client if we got a problem and laying it out. But the whole thing in the back of my mind, what's a good employee? What's a good client? Bad employees and bad clients cost you money. Good people, good clients don't. I mean, they do make you money, should say. And that's just the way I've learned to make decisions. And I think for the best of everybody, it works that way. And that means sometimes you got to face some tough decisions and walk away from money because it's not necessarily just scope. I mean, they get buyer's remorse and decide they just want their money back. I mean, if you're going to fight them, it's going to be a lot of negative energy and an awful lot of negative cash flow, perhaps. So sometimes I bite the bullet pretty quickly in that one. I discontinue relationships the first sign they're going astray if I need to.
Do any of you price what you do, assuming there will be some scope creep?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Can you put a percentage on it?
I'm working on the percentages now. I've been tracking to see what are the, we call them ERs, emergency responses that I have to send to the cabinet company. What is wrong with the cabinets? How many cabinets per job? What is the dollar versus the percentage of the cost of the project, so that I can have that, basically a slush fund to cover those warranty costs, because it does come up. You forget to order a piece of crown molding, or the contractor has the extra piece that you put into the project just in case there was an error, but he makes 2 errors in cutting, and you don't want to have to slice a piece of crown molding because it'll be noticeable. So you have to order a $300 piece of crown molding, and it just adds up. You need another this, you need another that, this is damaged.
So that's not just for scope creep, that's also to cover yourself just because things go awry.
Yeah. But sometimes the customers will say they do want some additional things, and you have to put those in. But that's part of it. So scope creep, warranty coverages, errors, that's all put into the slush fund. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out what that correct dollar amount is so that comes out of my overhead expenses.
Jackie, do you have a slush fund?
I don't, first of all, think about it like that. I'm not sure that I would call it that. But when we do create our fixed monthly pricing, because we don't do billing by the hour, we have to think about, what's the quantity they're going to ask for? What are they going to actually end up needing? What are our recommendations? And price accordingly. And so, I have to think about it. Is it an exact percentage? No, because every month we're still tracking how many things we're doing and how long it's taking us. And so we guesstimate that. We don't track hours to the minute like some firms that bill by the hour. But I know how long, if we're doing 4 rounds of a logo, I can tell you how long that took for 6 artists. And so we'll do an assessment at the end of each month in our monthly reports of this is what we billed you, but this is all the time we spent. And so after a few months, I can get a real good handle on where we are versus what we're charging. And that fuels the process for when we price it out next time.
How do you deal with the client expectations, given that you're charging by the month, but you're putting, hours of employee time into the project? Does the client know what your expectations are in terms of how many hours this is going to take?
Well, one of the first things that we always do is like a design build of a home. We have to start with the architect figuring out the plan of what we're building. We call that razor branding. That's our strategic brand plan. So now we're mapping out the trade shows, the social media, the email campaigns, the sales flyers, the brochures, all the things that are going to need to be done over the course of the year. And that fuels our pricing process. And so that allows us to really kind of know the answer to that. And then this is a new evolution of our process. We are now mapping out type of work by type of work, quantity by quantity, timeline by timeline, exactly what we're going to be doing. And it aligns to the plan. And so, because it's design build, we're building it too. And so now for the monthly execution, there it is. So there's the scope. When they decide to add an extra conference that no one expected, or they decide to launch another product that wasn't accounted for when we created the plan 8 months ago, then it's up to us to either say, oh, well, we're not doing this as much, so this fits, or this is additional, we'll need to charge more.
But Jackie, what if it's not the client asking for something specifically additional? What if it's just that it takes you more hours than you thought it would take?
Oh, we eat that. Oh, if it's more hours, we eat that.
Have you gotten pretty good at estimating how many hours it's going to take?
Very.
Yeah, it works the same way in my business. We map out what it is. It's basically we're defining the deliverables, because if you start talking about, well, it's this many hours this month, that doesn't work for me. So if I say, okay, at the end of this, you're going to have 3 concepts to look at, you'll choose one of those and we'll develop it. So I can, as I keep track of hours, I can figure out how long it takes somebody to do that. Myself, I can do it this hours. If I hire somebody else to do it, it's that many hours. over the course of many projects, you start to get a real feel for how long it takes to do step 1 to step 2 and get that deliverable done.
Sure. Ted, do you see scope creep as primarily a pricing problem, a sales problem, or an operations problem?
Operations problem, definitely. I work hard and we work hard with our clients. I mean, when you get into scope creep, you got to take a look and say, okay, what are the ingredients that actually go into scope creep? And here's where I'm going to say honesty comes into a big focus in a lot of organizations, because sometimes side deals are made between, let's say, a salesperson and the account, or customer service and the account, so they can keep things going, but they never surface. So we want to put a system together where we're going to be able to identify where exceptions are made. They got to be public. They may be the right thing to do, and if they are, we want to do them, but we want them to be public and not surprised when we do, closing the books at the end of the month or something like that. Side deals, exceptions, sometimes escalations. Somebody doesn't want to make a decision, so they throw it over to another person or a manager. And that's where it starts to get sticky to say, well, what's going on? Why do they want this exception? Or why are you now escalating it to me where I got to make the decision? And a lot of times, even long-term habits, you make a side deal quietly, doesn't surface, you don't charge them for it, may be the right thing to do in year 1, but year 2, they may expect it. Well, wait a minute, you worked with us this way in the past. Why aren't you doing it now? So you got to really be very careful about how you're governing and the rules you put in place on how you're tracking your projects and what you're doing and the ingredients that go into it. So I have a 2-week billable, if you will, rule. If you're not paying your invoices, because we invoice weekly on our projects, if you're not paying in 2 weeks, we're going to pause the project. We're going to have a long conversation to see if we start up or if we don't. Because the one thing you don't want to do is build accounts receivables to a large extent. I mean, you can't touch that money. Receivables are nice to have. They make people feel good sometimes, but they don't put money in the bank and they don't enable you to pay a lot of bills. So you got to guard against all those things. And I look at the ingredients, as I just mentioned, the escalation, the exceptions, the side deals, long-term habits that are bad habits that we just let exist that we shouldn't. And that comes down to the systems you design and how you're going to run your business.
Have any of you hit upon language that's been especially effective for you in basically saying no to a client who's asking for something that you hadn't agreed to?
F off. No, that's not the approach I take, but I want to sometimes. Is that the language you were thinking of?
Have you tried that out, Jaci? How does that work?
Not as well as I would like it to.
I have to deal with it a lot. And a lot of times it's you reassure the client first. It's like, that's a great idea. However, based on the budget we've established, that's going to put you over. Happy to take that into consideration if you're willing to increase your budget. So we do talk about it.
And that's been effective.
Yeah, because they need to know that, it's time, money, and effort. So they realize, if I bring it up, it's like, oh, that's a wonderful idea. I love the idea of doing this or that. But this is what we have in the budget to do this. Do you want to change some other part of the scope to incorporate this? Do you want to increase your budget? Or do you just want to move on? And then they sit there and they think about it and it's like, oh, I didn't realize that was going to be expensive. No, I don't want to do that. So it gives them the opportunity to opt out, but it also allows them to have an opinion on what they're doing and voice the ideas that they have.
And for me, it depends on who I'm talking to. I think there are people, Lena, you just talked about, you deal with them in an honorable way and you explain and you have choices to make. But there are some people who are just obstinate and you've got to deal with them like, I hate to use this analogy, but some countries you have to have a heavy hand, or individuals, a heavy hand, and you got to deal real matter of fact and in their face and say, this is the way it's going to be, or this is what I'm going to do. And you got to carry it out. You got to deal with it because there are people out there that just want to say, I might be able to get an extra 5%, so I'm going to push them in this way just to see if I can get it.
Ted, it sounds like you're dealing with some tough clients. How are you finding these people?
Well, I have an awful lot of good clients too. And the good always outnumber the bad because I get rid of the bad. I'm just very in tune because I've been in this business long enough and service-related businesses that it's like, you got to call a spade and be honest with everybody. And then you got to have those tough conflict decisions or conversations, and you just got to go for it. And, I might talk about them more now in this podcast because hopefully people who are just starting out in business or they have small businesses, they can learn from, the agony in some respects that I had to go through, because when I was starting out, I was afraid to have tough conversations with people because I just wanted everybody to like us. I wanted to do well. I thought highly of everybody, whether
and you
I
wanted
should
the
have or
money
not.
coming in too, so you could
exactly.
stay in business.
Exactly. And that's where I learned I got to have these tough conversations early, and they don't bother me anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a muscle that you exercise and it gets better. Most people are people pleasers when you're the business owner. You want people to be happy. But then you realize that you're going to be unhappy. Your employees are going to be happy. The customer's going to be unhappy. And the sooner you have the hard conversations, the better off you're going to be. And you just have to do it.
Yeah.
It gets easier. Ted's not the only one who has customers. I fired a couple of customers too.
But you do what's best for both parties concerned. That's what you have to do, in my opinion. And sometimes parting ways is the best thing.
Yeah, and sometimes it is, because in our instance, if they're abusive to the contractors or to some other people, it's just a no-win. You can't have that. You have to draw the line and stand up for it. There's nothing wrong with having integrity.
And that's your brand. You're talking about your brand there. So I think that's all important.
Jackie, is there one thing you've done that's been most helpful in dealing with this issue?
I think it's better definition in the beginning of what the scope is so that both parties, we know what monthly social media means, but the client doesn't. They don't know what that's going to mean in terms of the information that we need from them for the good stuff that's happening day in, day out when we're not on their property, the strategic things that are longer term plays, the ways that we need to be targeted for each of their different target audience segments. They just think it's, 6 posts. And so it's like, no, it's more like 15 posts. And then they're like, well, no, it's 30 posts. No, it's more like 15 posts. And so, it really is about defining quantity and quality up front of something and then sticking to it. And if we do go over a little bit here because it was necessary at that time, swinging that equilibrium back the other way so we stay calibrated. And again, it's all about communication.
It is. And the other thing I would add is timelines. If you have, especially in Jackie's world, where you have materials that you have to receive from the client, if they need to supply photos or they need to approve something and they miss the deadlines, you're going to miss deadlines, and that's going to cause issues too. So when you're defining your deliverables, I want to put the time frames in there too.
I'm sure that's important for you too, Lena, in terms of people making decisions so that you can order what you need to order and line up what you need to line up.
Yeah, when I'm lining up 8 different contractors to be in and out of a project in 8 weeks, everybody has to have the work done before they get there, or you lose that contractor's date, and then you could be waiting 3 to 6 months for them to come back. Yeah, we don't want to get in that situation.
Lena, is there one thing you've done that's been most helpful to deal with this?
Yeah, getting my letter of agreement, my contract tightened up so that the deliverables are clearly defined. So this many revisions, this much time frame, this is the budget. Yeah, getting those written down and reviewing them every week so they know what to expect, what we've accomplished, what we're going to do next, and what we just did.
How about you, Ted? Is there one thing that you've done?
I can't say there's only one thing. I think there's a multitude, and I keep coming back, always deciding, are they a good client or are they a bad client? Are we being good to them? Or are we being bad to them? And that's just basically where I drive a lot of things.
Got it. I hadn't expected accounts receivable to come up in this conversation, but that happens to be the topic of the small business subreddit post that I want to run by you. Let me read what a business owner wrote on his post. I've been running my business for a while, and the one thing I still can't get comfortable with is chasing payments. It's not that I don't know how, it's that every reminder feels like I'm personally begging. I end up putting it off or just sending one email and hoping for the best. Is this just me, or is this a common thing for small business owners? Can anybody relate to that?
Yeah, I know I can.
How'd you get past it?
I don't like accounts receivable, so I make phone calls and let people know, and it's explained up front. This is exactly what we're looking at. I have cash flow just like you. Here's what we need. If we're happy and we're moving forward, great. If there's any problem, let's get it resolved right away. Accounts receivable are an illusion to a lot of entrepreneurs and business people, I think.
Was there a time when you did not deal effectively with this, where you, like this person who wrote in, where you let it go too long because you weren't sure how to deal with the client?
Yeah, and for me personally, I had to learn how to overcome that conflict and asking those tough questions and get the decisions, because as long as you have an accounts receivable in the books, you look at it like I'm going to get paid, or at least I hope I am. But it's like trying to close when you're in a sales effort and you're a salesperson. Can you actually ask tough questions to close the contract? Get it signed. And, when you have an accounts receivable, you think you're going to get paid. You're hoping you're going to get paid, but you may not get paid. And that's failure. And you don't want to look at it. And it makes you go back to your own identity, I think, of, why am I not getting paid this person? I mean, I'm not accepted. Again, entrepreneurs like it to be accepted, particularly their company. So I think there's a lot of internal emotional things and internal, I'm going to say, parts of our personality that come out when it comes down to accounts receivable questions and conversations.
Lena or Jackie, did you guys have a learning curve dealing with this issue?
Oh, yeah.
I don't do accounts receivable anymore. I charge up front. So when we get to our big purchasing meeting, if somebody's going to buy $50,000 worth of cabinets, they're paying for that 100% up front because it's a custom order. And I don't need a new kitchen in my house. So those cabinets are specifically for their particular location. So it used to be very scary for me. I would just take a 50% deposit because I was being like, oh, that's so much money. I don't want to ask for that much. And then I had a client who was very ill. And I was very, very concerned that they would not be alive by the time the project was finished. And I was very glad that I had learned how to ask for the money up front, because what am I going to do if somebody dies on the job? It just, you don't want to get stuck with this stuff. So trigger event, something happens and then you learn, okay, I need to do it differently. So now I charge up front even before I do a basic in-home consultation. They get an invoice from my admin. It goes through the email. They pay for it up front.
So it's not just for situations where you're making a purchase on their behalf. It's also about your payments for your services.
Right. Yeah, because I'm working on intellectual property here. So I walk into somebody's house to do a consultation, and I'm using my years of experience to help them figure out, can this wall come down? What kind of design solutions can we have? And as much as I try not to design all the time, I mean, that's just my natural habitat, and I'll just give them ideas. And that might be very valuable, and then they don't need me anymore. So I charge for my consultations, and I charge before I get there because my big fat mouth is going to run.
Jackie, what was your learning curve like?
Exactly the same, except for us, it's media. And I don't want to use my money to pay for their media buy. I want to use their money to pay for their media buy. So we bill 30 days in advance. So they have 30 days to pay it, but the media doesn't run until the invoice is paid.
And how about payment for your services?
Retainer, we bill at the beginning of the month. And really, by the time we get to that point, we've already done the razor branding, which is a sizable, it's a 5-figure to 6-figure project, which we've billed half to start and half when we finish. And so at that point, we've already established, they are quick pay, or it takes them a while. We had to send a reminder. And so we have some clarifying conversations before we move into the retainer. And then the retainer is at the beginning of the month. And so we're collecting before we finish that month's work.
Would you say you've solved this problem to the extent it was a problem?
I would say so. We have a couple of clients that move a little slower than I would like because they're more on the 60-day, but they're a global company, billions of dollars company. I would imagine I am probably the smallest account in their list. And so the fact that they probably typically pay $120 and we're sitting at $45, I'm not complaining,
Although, isn't that so often the case that it's the largest companies that take it the longest to pay? The ones.
Yes.
And isn't that offensive to you?
It is not, because as long as I know if they are really 45 and that's just what their process takes and they stay consistently 45, then I know we need to bill them 15 days sooner so that my net 30 and their 45-day align to be the same day. Because that's their system. And I'm not going to have this entire global company change the way the accounting department in Taiwan does what they do because I am sitting in Louisiana would like to get paid 15 days faster. Like, come on. So we adjust. We're a little more nimble and flexible. But to your point, it is about understanding them and their needs and us and our needs so that I know we're better aligned and there's no hurt feelings or misunderstandings and we can all be on the same page.
Well, it certainly helps when it's a big company that you've dealt with and you're confident you're actually going to get paid.
Correct. Absolutely. And look, I read the trades just like anybody else, and I see a lot of the larger advertising companies, not naming names, but most of them are on the stock market, and it's the things you see on your store shelves, have gone to a net 365-day terms on media. That means the agency that wins, and I use air quotes here, their account is paying for their media for a year before they get reimbursed.
Wait a second.
We're not doing that.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Why would anybody accept that?
Because it's a $500 million account.
Ah, okay.
But that actually makes me more worried, not less worried.
I got to tell you what convinced me and got me over any fear of that. I looked at an account like that or a bad account and I said, I want you working with my competitors.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's the gift I want to give my competitors because then I can go out and search for the good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, Jackie, I mean, if Tide knocked on your door and offered you $500 million, you have the strength to say no?
On those terms, absolutely.
Yeah, that's not 100%. A good
100%.
fit.
Because no bank is going to loan me the $500 million. So yeah, I have no qualms about it. I mean, it goes to, we have a criteria, Lauren, and one of our criteria is they have to be B2B. Okay. Every time we stray outside of that, I deeply regret it for days and days and days. So already Tide is off the list. 2, they've got to be mid-size, mid-market. We want to take a number 15 and move them into the top 5, not grab a number 2 and try to keep them there. We want challenger brands, not the established people who don't want to make changes. We're here to make changes, do things differently, get attention for our clients. Number 3, they have to be a good partner in terms of our billing and payment and all of that. And then number 4, they have to be kind of nice people to work with. They have to believe in the process. They have to be kind and considerate to my people. If you expect my team to work on a Saturday or Sunday, we're not going to work with you because I don't expect my team to work on the weekend. So you can't either. So things like that. I'm going to protect my team and protect the client. And that means it's got to be a good relationship. It is a lot like being married. And I'm not going to marry you just because you have a lot of money and you're mean. I'm going to marry you because you have a lot of money and you're nice. And you can cook Italian food for me every night at 5:00.
I think that's the deal you got, isn't it?
Yeah, it does sound familiar.
Well, not the money part, but the rest of it, yes. He's good looking, he's nice, and he cooks for me every day.
Good deal. All right. My thanks to Lena McGuire, Jaci Russo, and Ted Wolf. And a special thanks to our sponsor. This episode was brought to you by Grasshopper Bank. Thanks, everybody. One thing before you go. Everything we do at 21 Hats is created by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs to help us all learn together. If you get something out of listening to these podcast episodes, consider joining the conversation. You can do that by joining the 21 Hats Sounding Board, a Slack channel where you can tap the wisdom of a very smart crowd, or by becoming a founding member and joining our monthly Zoom forum, where you can be part of conversations much like the ones we have on the podcast. You can sign up for both by subscribing to the Morning Report. If you have any questions, you can email me at lauren@21hats.com. And if you get something out of this podcast or out of the Morning Report, please tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell every business owner you know. Your word of mouth, owner to owner, will always be the most effective way to build this community for all of us. Thank you. It means a lot. This episode was produced by another entrepreneur, Jess Stuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Thanks for listening, everyone.